Good evening, everybody. It's just after 8 o'clock here, and it's the first installment ever of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. Just realizing the overlay is not updated here. Thought I had updated that earlier, but yeah. I'm your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. This show is going to be brought to you by. It's just after 8. Make Fasteners and Tools and Kent Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. Kent Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia is a new sponsor that we got joining the G Show Productions team this season. We're very excited to unveil some of the work we've been doing with them, as well as, just getting this year started with them and hopefully having a successful hockey season as partners with them. Thanks to Make Fasteners and Tools for returning as a main sponsor this season. We also got Terrico and Goaltenders returning as sponsors to G Show Productions this year. And what the Manitoba Hockey Podcast is going to be about. Of course, not Manitoba Hockey Daily. That's going to be updated after the first guest comes on the show here. What this podcast is going to be about is me covering all things outside of what we already broadcast here on G Show Productions, which is coverage from the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League, the Manitoba Female Hockey League, as well as Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. We're striving to be the home of hockey in Manitoba in 2025, and I think adding a podcast like this into it, where we're covering, what we'll be doing is covering the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League, the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, the Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League, as well as taking a look into how the University of Manitoba Bison's hockey teams are faring once their season of play gets kicked off. We got two guests joining the show here tonight. We're going to have guests on weekly on this podcast from around these different leagues that we're going to cover here strictly on the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. And starting off, it's going to be me speaking with a good buddy of mine, an old friend, reuniting with him, and Cody Wall, voice of the Winkler Flyers in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. He joined me yesterday in a pre-recorded interview to talk about, Winkler, their chances heading into this season, what last season was like, his history with how it came to be for him to call games for Winkler, as well as taking a look at the rest of the playing field in the MJHL and who could potentially be challenging Winkler as they look to defend their title this season. That's all coming up next on the Manitoba Hockey Podcast here on G Show Productions, brought to you by Kent Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia and Canada, Fasteners and Tools, for this pilot episode. The reunion here on G Show Productions. Cody Wall, voice of the Winkler Flyers, defending champions in the MJHL heading into this season. And a guy that I've had a chance to work with in the past in the industry. Cody, I know from talking to you, your life's been pretty chaotic, but you've been doing well from what you've said. Great to have you on, man. How you feeling on this Monday morning, or this Monday afternoon, as I should say, as we're doing this pre-recording now?
Yeah, I'm doing good,
Hey there,
Graham. Obviously, we've kept in touch from our past
sorry,
working together. This is going to be kind of the first time we've got a chance to work again with each other, but pleasure getting to be on the show here with you.
Yeah, and speaking of the past, last season, a very successful one for the team that you call the Winkler Flyers. We'll get into them in just a moment here, but how did it come to be for you to really become the voice of the Winkler Flyers, broadcasting all of their games last season on Flow Sports?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, this is my now third year going on with the Flyers, being their play-by-play announcer for their broadcast. And, it kind of just happened. Obviously, mentioned we used to work together, Graham, at a prior establishment. After parting ways with them, noticed that Winkler, their play-by-play guy in Kevin Paul's, recently had moved over at the time to the new Niverville Nighthawks. So there was an open position, and I just kind of, by luck, saw it. Threw my name in the hat, and just kind of the right place, the right time, and the prior working in doing some play-by-play with the past Pilot Mound Buffaloes, Pembina Valley Hawks girls teams in the past, gave me the idea to try and see if the Flyers would take me on, and they have. And it's been a pleasure getting to call their games these last number of seasons.
Yeah, and by the way, it's Flow Hockey, not Flow Sports. My apologies there, everybody. Want to be accurate on everything. But yeah, I mean, for us, we worked together for at least a year. I mean, a couple years at that. Whatever it may be, I definitely see from the calls you've been posting on your social media, from the games you've done, you've definitely gotten more confident in the role. So it's been awesome for myself, someone that got to work with you so closely, to see that. And brought up the past. Well, last season Winkler went 42-11, 2 and 3 in the regular season, finishing with a phenomenal record. And then they went on a championship run, taking down the Portage Terriers, the Verdun Oil Capitals, and sweeping the Steinbach Pistons in the finals to secure their fourth MJHL championship in franchise history. They qualified for the national tournament, didn't go according to plan. They're losing in the quarterfinals. But take me through, Cody. Last year, you were there for a lot of it, seeing what this Winkler Flyers team was able to do, how they were able to accomplish what they did last season.
Yeah, last year, team had a lot of returning guys from my first season. And, the group really from the onset of the season, it felt like they had something special. I mean, obviously you talk to those guys in the room, they might very much believe that they had the team to go on a championship run. And you know what, they ended up fulfilling their goal. But it was really great to watch that team grow. Obviously, a long season, you have the highs, the ups, the downs, but they were able to at the right time dial it in. Especially at playoff time, they were a team very much set up to be a gritty playoff type team. Obviously, in hockey, when the playoffs come around, the game changes a bit, and the bigger, stronger teams, which the Flyers do have definitely prided themselves on having, is a big and tough team. That seemed to pay off for them in the playoffs, and managed to have a long playoff run. Flyers ran into some good teams. Obviously, Portage they took on in 5 games, but that was a very back and forth series. The Flyers really, at the end of that series, kind of felt like they found their footing. Obviously, Verdun, very tough opponent for them in the second round. Taking that one to 6 games. They were another team that was built for a long playoff run. They had a couple of guys, a guy who in that series for Verdun was very successful, was a guy, Grady Lane. He played some time for the Spokane Chiefs in his junior career, even playing at the start of his junior career with the Winkler Flyers back in the COVID shortened season. So he was a guy who, for the Verdun Oil Caps, came out, played hard. He was hard to play against, played a very physical game, but Flyers in their own right, like I said, had a strong team, able to weather the storm. Solid goaltending from Malachi Clausen, a Holy Cross commit, and actually is currently at Holy Cross playing for the Crusaders for this upcoming season. But it was just a great season overall. So many guys kicking in and doing what they could.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at the stats here, 12-3 in last year's playoffs. Like mentioned, swept the Steinbach Pistons in the finals. But you had pointed to me that final series before we started recording here, it wasn't exactly your normal sweep in terms of all the games being decisively for the team who ends up sweeping the series. You telling me that all games were pretty competitive here, and those were the 2 best teams in the East Division last season. Take me through what that was like, experiencing that final series in particular.
Yeah, before I go into that series, everybody talks about that interview from Rob Brendamore a couple years back when he was talking about when the Carolina Hurricanes got swept, but it wasn't a typical sweep. I very much feel like that was what that final series was. You saw the Winkler Flyers. It was tight every game, aside from game 2 being separated by 1 goal. The final 2 games of the series going to overtime. So it was a really tight series. Those 2 teams throughout the whole season they've had a pretty significant rivalry since I've been with the Flyers. And it was made for great hockey to watch. It was very back and forth. Both teams very evenly matched in skill, size, goaltending. Both teams had 2 of the best goaltenders in the league throughout the regular season. The Winkler Flyers, as I mentioned, having Malachi Clausen, the Steinbach Pistons having Cole Plowman. And both those goaltenders now have gone on to Division I hockey. I mentioned Clausen with Holy Cross Crusaders, and Cole Plowman, Division I with the Alaska Fairbanks NCAA team. So, really good series with a lot of good talent.
Yeah, and I think another big thing was, you talked about how this Winkler Flyers team had that belief heading into last season that they could put it all together and win a championship. Not only did they sweep Steinbach, they took down the defending champs. These were 2 of the top teams in the league last season. So, I mean, having a chance to talk to the guys, like I'm sure you did have that chance, around after the time they did win the championship. Did that make it even more sweet that they were able to complete it against not only the defending champs, but the top team in the league last year?
Yeah, it definitely was an extra cherry on top. Going back to the prior year, before the Flyers won the championship, they were knocked out in the prior season playoffs against the Steinbach Pistons. That one going to Game 7. So very much could have been with the Flyers and the Pistons that year as well, being the top 2 teams. I think the group that came back had that belief that they were 1 goal away from, even in the prior installment of the Flyers, possibly having a championship pedigree team. And then all those, as I mentioned, those returning guys came back with a lot of oomph and a lot of motivation. And I do think that there was an extra cherry on top to defeat the Steinbach Pistons, a team that the Flyers and the Pistons, bitter rivalry, often having a great game when the teams do play each other. They play each other hard, they play each other fast, and there's no love lost when Steinbach's in the Winkler building and vice versa.
Yeah, for sure. A rivalry that, of course, has been there for years between these 2 teams in rural Manitoba. And yeah, the Winkler Flyers capturing their 4th title in franchise history and their first since the late 1990s. But of course, this team has 14 returning skaters to this year's lineup. Not exactly going to be the same team as last year, but a good chunk of experience coming back from that championship squad. This team, of course, lost in the quarterfinals of the Centennial Cup last season, which is the Junior A National Tournament put on by Hockey Canada. But Cody, so far through camp, how the returning guys have looked, and just overall how everyone's looked, the rookies as well.
Yeah, like you said, 14 returning players for the Flyers. A lot of them coming on defense. Believe 7 returning defensemen for the Flyers. So obviously they're going to have a strong D-core here. So with that many returning defensemen, and obviously the Flyers may still, with having that many returning guys, there may be still some roster moves to try and bolster the forward crops, but that'll be remain to be seen. So, but the guys who have come into camp at forward have looked good. Flyers only getting 1 preseason game to this point, but they've had a couple of guys who've come in and they've looked good. One guy who really stood out on Friday night was number 9. Well, I guess he was wearing number 9 at preseason for the Flyers, but Brendan Vincent, he was a guy who came all the way from Long Beach, California. The Flyers have had a good repertoire for getting these guys out of California, and playing good for the Flyers. My first year with them, they had a backup goaltender in Aiden Como. He played phenomenal in a backup role. Went on to, I believe, get a starting role in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. Can't quite off the top of my head remember where he was playing. But the California connection has been good for the Flyers. They got another tall guy in Brady Craik. He played a very physical role, especially late in the playoff run for the Flyers. I believe Craik was standing 6'4", a big-bodied forward, played that gritty role, which I think helped with the Flyers. But just getting back to, Brendan Vincent, he was a guy who, like I said, coming from Long Beach, California, played 84 games between U.S. high school and U18 AAA and picked up 107 points. So a guy coming out of the States, so far looking really good for the Flyers.
Yeah, and that, of course, for a team that scored so many goals last season, just taking a look at the standings from last year and the points here really quickly. One sec. Yeah, for Steinbach, I mean, they led the league last year in goals for, but for Winkler, they were 10 goals behind them, 234. And like you mentioned, I think that defense with all that experience is going to be a huge positive for them. Coming back to a team last year that only allowed 122 goals. For Ernst in net, he had a really promising rookie season last year, getting championship experience. How huge is that for Winkler to have this player now in his second year, manning the pipes as the starter projected to this season behind such a stacked and talented decor?
Yeah, I think Ernst is going to come in. He learned a lot in his first year backing up Clausen. They kind of split the time, kind of a 70-30 split. But the team was very confident anytime that Liam Ernst was in between the pipes. Obviously he didn't play as many games as a couple of the other goaltenders, but looking at the stats from last year, he was top 5, I believe, in every statistical category when it comes to save percentage, goals against. He is a guy who I think is looking for an elevated role, and now I think he's going to be awarded the chance to at least run with the reins a little bit here.
Yeah, it should be interesting for sure to see exactly how things are handled this year in the pipes compared to last year, knowing that there's not the same type of experience in the Flyers net projected this season, at least. But for Winkler, they'll be taking on the let's take a look here. The Steinbach Pistons once again in a rematch from their first preseason matchup. For Winkler so far, how they fared in preseason, they get the 3-2 win against Steinbach last Friday. Take me through that game, Cody. I'm sure you were there to call it, how it all went down.
Yeah, it was a very back and forth game. You can see, guys were trying to get acclimated to the junior level. Both teams not going with a lot of veteran presence. I believe the Flyers having 2 veterans in Will Brophy and Sully Ross in the lineup. And then taking a look at the Steinbach Pistons, I believe they only went with the one returning player, and I think it was Eric Cote. But also they did acquire Steinbach prior to that game, did acquire a veteran from I call him a veteran, but he was a rookie last year with the Winnipeg Blues, Brody Green. He looked good as well, but a very back and forth game. Both, the Flyers would kind of control the pace throughout the first 10 minutes. Then the momentum would kind of shift a bit the other way. Both teams, trying to figure out what their identity looks like heading into the regular season.
For this Flyers team, obviously going to lose more up front compared to other positions. This team, like mentioned, second highest goals for last season. Do you see that potentially taking a dip? Do you feel the talent there is good enough to sustain high level numbers? Maybe not quite near what they put up last year, just based on what they got coming back, the continuity. Is it going to be an even more defensive outlook for this Winkler Flyers team? What are your expectations ahead for this group in 2024, 2025?
You know, it is early in the preseason, but judging by the guys that they do have coming back, guys who I think are going to be looking for elevated roles. You know, they got veteran Brody Boschman coming back for his final year with the Flyers. He was just at a point per game last year. I got to imagine we're going to see that output again. So, you know, the Flyers still going to have some offensive punch. And judging by some of the newcomers coming in, I mentioned Brendan Vincent, but you know there are a lot of other guys who come with a lot of skill, and I think are going to surprise some people when the puck drops on opening night for regular season.
Talked about Steinbach a lot already. There's a lot of great teams in this 17-team league in the MJ. Who do you see? I know it's early and there's still a lot to be sorted out, but on paper, heading into this year, who would you say is the biggest challenger to knock off the Winkler Flyers off their throne?
You know, it may be cliche, especially when it comes to the MJHL, but the Steinbach Pistons always have a strong team. I imagine they're going to be putting their best foot forward as well. You know, we've seen some other teams starting to load up on players. The Wayway Capital Wolverines, they've picked up a couple of guys who've got a little bit of experience. I think they're going to be a team that should have a good run for themselves as well. And you can never count out the Verdun Oil Caps or the Portage Terriers. You know, they're always year over year. A couple of the top teams in the league always given, you know, other teams a hard time on any given night.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And speaking of Portage, now the MJ hasn't updated their past two champions at this point, which are Steinbach, of course, in 2023 and Winkler most recently in 2024. But for Portage, what a run they had from 2015 to 2019 pre-COVID, winning 4 out of the 5 championships. The other one going to the Steinbach Pistons, of course. Cody, it's going to be a great season. Can't wait to hear more clips from you this season. Maybe we'll even tune into some games since we'll be covering that team, the Winkler Flyers, and many teams in the MJ all season long on the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. We'll catch up in the next month or so here next time. But until then, you take care, man. Thanks for doing this again.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here, Graham, and look forward to chatting with you as the season progresses.
Cody Wall, the voice of the Winkler Flyers on Flow Hockey, joining us here on G Show Productions pilot episode of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. Yes, I am on mute. Man, episode 1, there's always some kinks. Welcome back, everybody, I guess, since you didn't hear me there for the last, 20 seconds or so. But yeah, Cody Wall joining this edition of the show, brought to you by Ken Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia and McKenna Fasteners and Tools. As for action in the MJHL tonight, they took a night off of preseason yesterday. They're back in action tonight with 4 matchups going on right now. The Niverville Nighthawks, one of the few remaining undefeated teams in the preseason, are currently down 1-0 to the Selkirk Steelers, with 14:25 remaining in the second period. The Stampeders, the Swan Valley Stampeders, up 1-0 on the Dauphin Kings with over 10 minutes left in the second period. Verdun up 5-1 big on the Portage Terriers in Portage's preseason opener, and the Wolverines up 1-0 on the Millionaires with 12:39 remaining in the first period. For more information on everything MJHL hockey, be sure to check out their website at mjhlhockey.ca for more details. Coming up next, we're going to be throwing it over to some AAA hockey coverage on the male side of things. Don McIntosh, president of the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League, will be joining me next to talk about Brandon's run last season, his expectations for this season around the league, on who is going to be challenging Brandon, and more on this edition of Manitoba Hockey Daily, brought to you by Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia and Canada Fasteners and Tools in our pilot episode. Stay tuned, everybody. It's Don McIntosh, the president of the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League. Don, thanks for coming on the show. You told me it's been 6 years for you, or at least you think, being the president of this league. How has it been? And yeah, I guess the journey that it's been so far.
Well, it's been a wonderful journey. There's been a lot of additions and enhancements, and trying to make better for the kids that play in the league, all the way around. We had an excellent commissioner, Levi Taylor, a young lawyer out of Winkler, who made some tremendous advances, in my opinion. For example, we televise all our games through Flow Hockey. Parents, grandparents can subscribe to that. We're just getting into now play-by-play. That's sort of the next step. We're tied in with another piece of software that called Huddle that keeps all the statistics and video of the game, so coaches can go back and look at certain plays and situations. So things are progressing quite nicely. Right now, however, our commissioner resigned, so our executive is sort of picking up the pieces here and getting things going in terms of the league. And however, our former commissioners, he's consulting with us when we need him, which seems to be more often than not, actually.
Well, that's of course some shocking news, I guess, with a resignment. But yeah, I mean, to see where the league has grown to, like you said, having games televised, having the analytics, and knowing that this is a league where you wanted to be the top players to play. How huge do you think it's been for this league's reputation, given that you're basically giving them the whole package with a pro experience like you have been?
Well, the Western Hockey League, the Manitoba Junior League use the same kind of analytics, so we're tied into that. I'm not sure about the NCAA. I think they're using those analytics as well. So it's all about showcasing our players, players that are obviously playing in the league that want to move on to junior, Western Hockey League, NCAA, pro hockey. Obviously, we're the top league in the province in the minor hockey category, and so we continue to push to try to provide the opportunity for the players. Like last year, for example, we had the top 68 broken into 4 teams, and we had a competition there at the Hockey for All Center in Headingley. I think that's what it's called now, the old Iceplex anyway.
Yeah.
And showcase 68 of our top players. So we're trying to do different stuff. We're trying to, we won't be able to do it this year, but we're trying to hook up some interlocking stuff, all-star stuff with Saskatchewan, their U18 league, and just again more exposure for our players.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And just growing within the hockey community, I think that's huge for sure. This league saw a team go all the way to the finals at the national championships in the TELUS Cup in the Brandon Wheat Kings. A team that was so good last season, went on a great run to make it there, to TELUS, qualifying through the West Regionals. Take me through. I mean, for all the viewers out there that are unfamiliar with Brandon, what made that team so special from a viewer standpoint?
Well, first of all, Brandon has an excellent developmental hockey program. They're not a large community, but they run a real good program. I'm guessing starting at about 12 years of age in terms of development and opportunity for kids, and they grow the kids within the program. So that speaks well of what they're doing from a hockey perspective. Secondly, there was an academy established out there and a separate rink, and so the kids out in Brandon area there have the opportunity to be working on their skills on a regular basis, tied into the academy. So I think that certainly helped them as well. And the fellow that owns the academy also owns the Brandon Wheat Kings in the Western Hockey League. So it's sort of a development model tied together. I think it's a good business plan. Makes a lot of sense. So they faced off against Saskatchewan, the winner. Of course, the host was the Winnipeg Wild, and then Thunder Bay represented Northern Ontario, and it came down against Saskatchewan. I think it went into overtime, and Brandon won 1-0, and then they went on to the TELUS Nationals, and fared very well, and unfortunately lost to a strong team out east, but showed themselves very well representing our province. I was really very, very proud of the team.
Yeah, and for this team losing to Magog, I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly, 4-1 in the national championship. But yeah, not a single regulation loss, absolute dominance last season for this team through the regular season and followed up with a special run. Looking at the standings, I mean, Brandon was, of course, the class of the league, but pretty competitive down below. A lot of 20-win teams, quite a few, and it looked pretty close in the standings. Has that been kind of the case, it being as competitive as it was last season, previous years, or was it a bit of a change in terms of seeing the type of parity last season?
No, I would say it's pretty consistent. Like we have 13 teams in the league, which includes Kenora. Kenora's in the league. The last 3 years, Central Plains has not participated in the league. They were unable to field a team. Hopefully they're planning, and I'm hopeful that they'll have a team in the league this year. And basically, the league is we got 6 basically strong teams and 6 or 7 weaker teams, just based on lots of things, but geographics and number of kids that live in the areas and those kinds of things. And then of course you got the 3 Winnipeg teams in Brandon, which would be 4 out of the top 6 on a regular basis. Eastman is usually in there, Pembina Valley sometimes Southwest. So that's sort of how our league is structured, and it's been that way for some time.
You speak of Kenora and how they're going to be coming back next season. Now, I had seen through social media that there was some talk about maybe them being removed from the league. Obviously, that didn't happen. Was there talks about that? Was there a meeting? What went into the decision, I guess, to keep Kenora in the league, and why they keep coming back, knowing that they're not even from Manitoba?
Well, annually they have to apply to come into the league. Our league approves it. Hockey Manitoba has to approve it, and Hockey Canada has to approve it to participate in the league. And that's been happening for quite a number of years. I guess it was December of, I think, 2022, we established a committee to look at a competition committee, it was called, to look at the competitiveness in the league, to deal with some of these issues I talked about, where you have the top 6 and the bottom 6 or 7. We invited all kinds of people from across the province to participate in that. And to make a long story short, we made a number of motions to make some changes to the league and boundaries and what have you. One of the motions was currently the U17 and the U15 AAA programs are managed by Hockey Winnipeg. The question is like, why is a region running provincial program? So we were recommending bringing U15, 17, and 18 under one broad provincial body, things of that nature. And also to deal with the competitiveness of the weaker 6 teams. Part of that process would have possibly meant that Central Plains would not continue in the league because they'd been out of the league for 3 years, unable to field a team. And the obvious reality is that if Central Plains is not going to be in the league, Kenora can't be in the league, obviously, right? So that was a discussion, but those motions were defeated at the May meetings. of Hockey Manitoba. So we're basically business as usual, 13 teams, which includes Kenora.
Well, right on it. It's great to know that there's going to be a wide range of teams playing in the league again this season with 13. And yeah, always like to see competitive hockey no matter what. And that's what this league's been delivering, for the past few years and for as long as, you can really look back at the standings and looking at how it's been. But looking at this season, of course, Brandon's looking to defend. There's going to be teams looking to take them down. Going to be competitive once again, as we've talked about. Has there been, certain teams on paper coming into this year that are going to be, looking to take that next step? Of course, what's the general, I guess, consensus going into who's going to be challenging Brandon for that title this year?
It's a good question. The teams as we speak are in the tryout process. I think most of the teams will plan to have their rosters finalized somewhere around September 22nd, somewhere in there. The league starts September 27th. So we're not far away from that. 17 days, I guess. Yeah. So things are kind of scrunch time right now. Not really sure. Some of the exhibition games are starting up as we speak. Southwest hosts a tournament, I think starting this weekend coming. So we'll get some idea of how some of the teams stack up against each other. But I would guess, the three Winnipeg teams and Brandon will be going at it for top place, has been the case for quite a while. And it'll depend on how the other teams form their rosters, I guess. It's sort of a wait and see kind of approach, right?
Yeah, kind of. I think that's the right approach for sure, because you never know what can happen until we start to play the games, right? But of course, we start to play the games in this league coming up in 2 days now on Thursday, as Brandon and Southwest will be taking on each other in Surrey, Manitoba. Same with Yellowhead and Southwest playing the next day on Friday. Going to be a busy weekend ahead and a busy schedule ahead of exhibition play once it does start. A lot of excitement from around the league, I'm sure, knowing that the puck's closer and closer to officially dropping on the 2024-2025 regular season with this portion of the schedule.
See, a lot of our kids right now are away at the Western Hockey League camps. Right. Some of them have been released and have been sent back. If you follow some of the kids are still there, and probably if they're going to stay, great. If they're not, they might get released closer to the end of September. So there's a little bit of juggling and those kind of things relative to the rosters. So it's good to see as many of our players in the Western Hockey League camps getting an opportunity to play there.
I think it ties back to when you brought up, and we talked about earlier, Flow Sports, having the broadcast for the games, having Huddle as, tracking in-game analysis, stuff like that. Knowing that you can offer that as well as being, a place where players can come to play if they get released from a WHL team and continue their development. I'm sure you and yourself, the rest of the league, take a lot of pride in that.
Absolutely. Well, again, when we look at our mission statement, it's to provide the opportunity for the players to develop, again, to Manitoba Junior League, Western Hockey League, NCAA, and Pro. That's what we're all about, and we continue to strive for that. So, the more players that get those opportunities, the better.
Well, Don, thanks for coming on and filling myself and all our viewers in on, the ins and outs of the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League. I'd love to talk to you again once the season gets going a bit, probably in a few months or so. So until that time, once we speak again, can't wait to do that. Speaking to you again coming up later on this year. You take care and enjoy the season that's going to be picking up very soon here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and give us a call anytime.
Don McIntosh, president of the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League, joining the pilot episode of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. Don McIntosh, president of the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League, joining this edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast, brought to you by McIntosh and Tools and Can Central Sports Cards. Happy I unmuted it this time right away instead of last time. You might hear a bit of extra noise in the background right now. I turned my heater on. Basement's uninsulated, so it's a bit chillier down here, and yeah, I'm not sure if it's cooled off tonight, but it wasn't a bad day outside. But yeah, great to talk to the president of what is touted, I think by many as the best hockey for U18s in the province. Some would argue the CSSHL is taken over and has filled that respective spot, but still a very competitive league and still a lot of great talent coming from this one in the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League. And in terms of the schedule, preseason, like mentioned, it opens up this Friday. Not this Friday, sorry, this Thursday, as we toggle through to the exhibition schedule. There we go. Just taking a look on my phone here, but yeah, Brandon taking on Southwest and Surrey, Manitoba. Southwest will play in a doubleheader in terms of playing back-to-back days, playing against the Yellowhead Chiefs. On Friday night, the Winnipeg Wild and Winnipeg Bruins face off against each other on Friday as well. Parkland, the Rangers taking on the Interlake Lightning on Friday in Surrey, Manitoba. Most of the preseason going to be played in Surrey, as well as some games at the Hockey for All Center. For more information on all things Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League, be sure to check out their website at mbu18AAAhockey.ca. I'm going to be bringing you many updates from that league, as well as the MJHL and all the other leagues that I mentioned that we cover at the start of this show. If you missed it, we'll be covering the MJHL as well as this Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League, but as well as the Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League, the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, University of Manitoba Bison's hockey coverage as well, taking a look at how those two programs are going to fare this season. And yeah, really anything to do with hockey here in the province of Manitoba, we're going to be covering it in terms of at the amateur level here on Manitoba Hockey, the podcast. Going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a weekly thing where we'll be coming to you live on Tuesdays on the G Show Productions YouTube channel and from our website at gshow.ca. Now, in terms of the time of the podcast, not too sure if it's going to be set in stone that it's going to be 8 p.m. on Tuesdays, but that's what it's set for right now. That's when the next episode is going to be coming to you guys. Hopefully, we're going to be talking to some high school hockey individuals in terms of people involved with that league, or maybe different teams in terms of coaches and players. Who knows? It's going to be a fun week next week. Stay tuned on our social media pages as well as on our website, as we'll start to load on all our content there and the previews on our website of what's to come with our content. And yeah, all the details will be released on our different social media outlets. Yeah, I'm going to take a quick transition and then we're going to end off this edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. Made it to the end of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. If you like this episode and you like the content that we brought to you today, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future updates on when these episodes come out. Special thanks to Cody Wall and Don McIntosh for coming on as the inaugural guests in the first ever edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. Thanks to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, as well as McIntosh and Tools for being the sponsors of today's episode. You'll be seeing a lot of them this season all over the network, as well as some of our other sponsors that we got in Terrico and in goaltenders. Yeah, episode 2 going to be coming to you next Tuesday. Be sure, like I said before, you go into the last transition to check out the details of this episode that will be posted on our social media pages on the weekend at the latest on Monday. Also, stay tuned for all of our content on our website at gshow.ca, as we'll be posting all of our content from our YouTube and social media, everything there, basically. Your one-stop shop for everything G Show Productions, I guess. Your home for Manitoba hockey in the 2024-2025 season. Or no, sorry, it's your home of hockey in Manitoba for 2024-2025. Can't believe I butchered my own slogan, our own slogan here at G Show Productions, but that's what we're striving to be with this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, episode 2 coming out next week with more exciting and great guests, more visuals next time in terms of B-roll, maybe some highlight footage if there is any from what's been played with these leagues so far. But that's going to do it for myself, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday.